Pines from Rupert Neve Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to set up and use your new Rupert Neve Designs Master Bus Processor, or MBP for short. The Master Bus Processor is our flagship dynamic control device built around custom transformers from the Rupert Neve Designs team. It has a powerful VCA compressor and limiter with a stereo field editor for controlling the width and depth of your recordings or mixes. The stereo field editor also has a special EQ to further shape your stereo image. The MBP is great for mastering, tracking, and studio or live mixing. In this video, I'll give you an overview of this powerful processor and how to get connected and get some great sounds. To connect the MBP, you will need two balanced XLR input cables and two balanced XLR output cables. Plug the included IEC into the back of the MBP. If using the external sidechain, connect two pairs of 1/4" TS cables to the send to and return from your sidechain source. These are carrying sidechain audio. Note, if you are experiencing any hum or buzz, you can try the rear panel ground lift switch, which lifts pin 1 on the XLR outputs, and if that makes no difference, then leave it grounded and explore other options like lifting pin 1 on the source to the MBP or isolating the noisy gear from the rack and the MBP itself. Let's power on the MBP and start with the front panel controls in the default position. All the controls on the MBP are detented for repeatability. The meters are designed for finer resolution at louder volumes. For the best metering, feed a signal in above around -5 dBu. Don't worry about overloading the MBP. It can handle up to +26 dBu before clipping. Begin with just the compressor active, comp in, and the SFE or stereo field editor bypassed. Set the threshold fully clockwise around +20, the ratio at 2/1, the attack at 50 milliseconds, the release at 200 milliseconds, the blend at 100%, the texture off, and in the feedback or FB mode, the RMS mode, and the sidechain high-pass filter off, the limiter knob fully clockwise, and the gain at 0. Aim for around +10 to +16 dBu on the output meters as a rough starting point. For this video, we're going to be using the Master Bus Processor linked so that I only have to adjust Channel A's controls. Now let's dial in some sounds. Gradually lower the threshold until you see about 2 dB of compression on the meters. Try different ratios. Over 8/1 is considered limiting. Vary the attack and release speeds depending on the program material, level control required, or desired effect. Faster attack and release times are usually more audible. Experiment with the controls to suit your material. These are just suggestions. Feel free to tweak the settings to your liking. The key is to start slow and listen carefully as you dial in the compressor. Let your ears guide you to the best settings. Try switching between the feedback, or FB, and the feed forward, or FF modes. Feed forward is generally more transparent and modern sounding, and feedback is more vintage sounding. And the more compression, the more pronounced the effect. Now, let's experiment with peak versus RMS detection. Use the peak mode for faster transients like drums, percussion, and piano. It clamps down on the transients more aggressively. RMS is generally considered smoother, gentler, and more musical, and usually works better for sources like stereo mixes, bass, guitars, and vocals. As always, experiment and let your ears determine what suits the material. Use the gain knob to adjust the makeup gain from the compression you are using and to set the output level to the next piece of gear. Note, the makeup gain also feeds the limiter, so increasing the gain drives more signal into the limiter. When setting the compressor makeup gain, you need to increase the limit threshold to maintain the same amount of limiting. Dial in the right balance of gain staging into the limiter and your downstream gear. Let's talk about sidechain high-pass filters, a frequently misunderstood subject. The high-pass filter for the MBP is in the sidechain or control path. It's not in the signal path. The sidechain high-pass filter doesn't kill the low end of your signal, Quite the opposite, in fact. On material with heavy low-frequency content, the high-pass filter tells the compressor only to ignore the very low-end information that will trigger the compressor, which may cause it to pump, and to concentrate more on the mid-range and high-end. This is very useful for full mixes with lots of low-frequency content, where you don't want the kick and bass driving the overall compression. The limiter knob controls the soft clip limiter ceiling or threshold and the maximum level the MBP will pass in dBu. Engage the limiter by turning counterclockwise to decrease the limiting threshold, and you will hear the relay click indicating the limiter is engaged. Here are some pro tips. The limiter is post-compressor makeup gain. Higher gain settings drive the signal harder into the limiter. The limiter timing characteristics are in fact compound or nonlinear, and the release time lengthens as you turn it counterclockwise into heavier gain reduction. The limiter also follows the blend setting. For limiting the whole signal, keep the blend percentage higher than 80% or predominantly clockwise. For more of a maximizer effect, use higher thresholds and drive it harder from the compressor makeup gain. Note: the meters reflect both compression and limiting. Dial in the right threshold and gain staging to achieve musical, transparent limiting. Remember, subtlety is the key, and let your ears be the final judge if the limiting is too much. Next, we have our famous silk circuit, which enhances the musical harmonic content in your tracks. It's not a simulation of saturation or distortion, it is actual transformer harmonic saturation that you can totally control. Engage silk with the silk switch, which toggles between off, silk red, and silk blue. Red silk creates transformer saturation weighted mostly towards mid-range and high-end sheen, and can make guitars, vocals, and keys come forward and get that sweet vintage tone. Blue silk enhances low-frequency and mid-low-frequency harmonics. Use blue to fatten up the drums, bass, or mixes for a larger-than-life sound. The texture knob controls the intensity of the silk effect. The harder you drive the output, the more the harmonic saturation is apparent. Note that silk may increase the output level slightly. Double-check your gain staging after adjusting. Another trick is to use parallel compression to add density and character while maintaining punch and transient bite. To do this, go heavy-handed on the gain reduction with the blend at 100% so you can hear the full effect. Then use the blend control to mix some dry signal back in to let some of the original dynamics come through uncompressed. Note: the blend control affects both the limiter and the compressor. Blend will also affect the stereo field editor when the SFE to comp switch is engaged. The link switch sums the sidechain control voltages to provide equal gain reduction on both channels. The channel with the highest level takes the priority of the sidechain. It also matches all channel B settings to channel A, except for the silk. So, before engaging link, make sure to manually match the silk settings on channel A and channel B. After that, you can use only the channel A controls to operate both channels. Linking makes stereo operation easier, but it's good to experiment with unlinked or dual mono operation as well. This can sometimes lead to a slightly wider stereo image. Think of the stereo field editor, or SFE, as a mid-side processor where the width controls the sides and the depth controls the center, but with the option of doing this in a frequency-dependent manner. Start with the SFE to comp switch off to use just the compressor on the main audio path, and the depth and width off as well as both EQs off. Set the width and depth at 12 o'clock and now engage width and adjust to widen or narrow the stereo image. Use the depth to increase or decrease the level of centered material. Engage the special frequency-dependent width and depth EQ, and now you can control the frequency range that the width or depth affects. Here are some common settings you might want to experiment with. Use the width EQ's high-mid or HM setting and the width control to spread the upper mid-range only, which can sound awesome on things like guitars or keys and still maintain a very solidly centered kick, bass, or other low-frequency items. You could also select LF on the depth EQ to tighten or fatten the bass center, for example. Another fun trick is to change how forward a vocal sits in the mix by selecting high-mid EQ and using the depth EQ to boost or cut the high mids. A wide variety of mix elements can be manipulated with the SFE without going back to the mixing stage. The SFE to comp button sends the audio from the output of the depth control to the channel A compressor and the output from the width control to the channel B compressor, enabling very creative imaging effects and control, and allowing you to compress the mid and side differently. For example, using the previously mentioned vocal depth settings with the high-mid EQ in, you can use the SFE to comp to compress only the high mids in the center channel. Another fun thing to try is to soften the harshness of some cymbals on the side information via the SFE to comp on and the width with the high-mid EQ in. The width and depth controls and their respective EQs will now control the compressed mid-side info in the audio path. Play around with the Master Bus Processor on your mixes or masters to add tone and character and get that big, sweet, and warm analog sound. You'll probably find yourself using far fewer plugins than you did before. You should also try it while tracking drums, rooms, guitars, or keys. And of course, it's awesome for live sound. Take time to experiment with all the powerful tools available in this processor. Thanks for watching. You can learn more about all our gear at rupertneve.com. And please feel free to contact us with any questions.